Hey friends, welcome to the End Evil podcast. This is Chris Jansen. Evil is the destruction of freedom. This week, I'm excited to bring to you a retrospective episode where we're going to go back. We're scrolling back almost 5 years ago to the very first work I ever did with End Evil podcast back in 2020. It's been a long road, and I'm excited to share with you guys that, we're approaching 100,000 downloads on the podcast, and we're opening a new exciting chapter in the End Evil podcast as my book comes out next month that I've written to share with you folks. But I just want to let you know also that whenever you click on any episode, this is the very first one here, who I am back in April 1st, 2020, April Fool's Day, huh? Was that right? January, February, March, April. Yep, April Fool's Day. What a joke, huh? I got a spot right here on the sidebar of any episode you pick, donate, and that there you can add a $1 donation per month. That's what some people are doing, which is awesome. Or you can just choose whatever amount you'd like to donate. I could really use some help right now. I'm looking for a new camera for the show, and any donations would really help with that. I also wanted to point out here on the side, there's a button that says "Get your End of All Evil book" and End Evil stickers, and you click on that, and that just takes you to this page, and you can put in your debit card or pay through Venmo or whatever works best for you. Put your address right here, so I can send you the book. I sent out 2 this week, and I'm excited to see people taking me up on that offer. One last thing is that this episode I did last week with Will Keller about star hydrogen therapy, and I'd like you to check out their website and products and content that they're sharing on that. And if you decide to go with one of those products, you use my code NEVIL10 at checkout to save 10%. For being part of the End Evil podcast. And I also wanted to point out that if you haven't yet joined the email list, it still says Warriors email newsletter, but I'm changing the name to End Evil Connect. And if you go this route, it still says One Great Work Warriors, but now what I'm doing is on every show, I need to fix that. Every show, I'm putting here right in the description an opportunity to put your email address in, and it'll look more like this, End Evil Connect newsletter. So either way you go about it, I'll get you on the list. And send me an email at my email address if you want to get involved. I'm going to start doing End Evil Connect, and that's going to be a special opportunity for folks to meet up with me once a month on the first Monday of every month. And we're going to talk about ways to do the one great work in our own lives and share our skills and energy and try to find some very productive things to do with that time. So email me if you'd like to get involved with that. I have this page right here. Where is it? Contact Chris. And here's my email address right now. It's a little obscure, but that's my email address. And you can hit me up. Say, I want to be part of End Evil Connect. And we'll get that going, and I'll send you the link when we get that set up. So without any more ado, I'm going to start the retrospective, which is going to be parts. We did an End Evil series, End Evil video series. And there's some other stuff on this page, but part 1 through 6 was my original work back in 2020. And today we're covering part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4. The value of life, good versus evil, interconnectedness, and the spell. And what I've done is cut down and consolidated 4 of those episodes so that we can have one tasty treat, knowledge treat to share tonight. So I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for coming, folks, and get involved. Hit me up for End Evil Connect. And subscribe to YouTube channel and share the show. All right, later on, folks.
purpose of this presentation is to work towards ending evil. Some folks may not believe that such a thing is even possible. Well, maybe that's part of the current problem. My aim is to impress you about the value of your time on this planet, to shine a light on the most important truths that have been obscured for too long, to give you the information and knowledge necessary to make true change in the world around us, to move human experience away from suffering and grief towards love and joy. Let's begin to work together towards the end of evil. This presentation is meant to be non-dogmatic, non-religious. I'm not trying to tell you any story that you need to believe. I'm not asking for your faith or any faith-based beliefs or assumptions related to a religious text or preface. Who I am. I just want to be really upfront and honest. My name's Chris Jansen. I've been working most of my life in the skilled trades line of work, carpentry work mainly, maintenance work secondarily. My father was a preacher who studied theology and spirituality. He sparked an interest in me at a very young age, a curiosity and a yearning for knowledge and wisdom, enlightenment. September 11th explosions. This really changed the reality, my reality. It took me some time to it really sink in, probably 10 years, but the result is I came to the conclusion that government is run by untrustworthy folks that don't care about America, morality, or its people. And the sad truth is that the inherent lies in this picture and that were sold to the public show that not enough people care about justice or truth. I could show you countless books, articles, documentaries, websites, all explaining why the disaster that happened on September 11th was a complex plot that was contrived, planned, exactly a conspiracy. This moment of realization marked my personal journey towards a difficult realization of many deeper truths about what's really going on in our country and in the world and in ourselves ultimately.
What are you doing, Rome?
Looking for the hidden picture.
If you stare at these things long enough, you're supposed to see some kind of hidden three-dimensional picture.
Oh yeah, look, it's a sailboat. You saw it too, damn it! What?
This next slide, the hidden picture. This is a funny little moment from a movie, Mallrats, as many of you might remember, and where he's trying to see the hidden picture in what we used to call those the magic eye pictures, where there's a 3D embedded picture. If you cross your eyes in such a way, you can see this 3D picture pop out. In that, a hidden picture is only hidden if you'll never see it if you're not looking for it. In other words, if you'd been walking through the mall and you just saw a design, you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, that design contains a hidden picture. It's not until someone tells you there's a hidden picture in there that it emerges. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because that is the nature of the truth regarding the bigger picture, what's going on in our world. One day I was looking through the internet, doing more research about September 11th. I stumbled across Dane Wigington runs a site called geoengineeringwatch.org. Someone that lives here in my own state, and he's giving a detailed, well thought out documentary about geoengineering that left me really wondering. First I didn't want to believe it. I thought this guy's probably a nut, but I started watching this guy. I started taking pictures, and I started thinking things out. The ramifications of global weather manipulations and biowarfare, and human population getting sprayed like rats without knowing it. The more I read and thought about it, the truth set in. It was too late. It took me a full year plus another year of some doubt and worrying before I felt really confident that this man was correct. This geoengineering chemtrail, something is going on a large scale. Without our consent, this weather engineering program is going on. I couldn't get it out of my head. I kept thinking, how can we live like this? I'm trying to find an appropriate way to bring up some of these problems in such a way that we can fix them, not just complaining about them. So I feel like it's partly my job to continue to remind people the danger inherent in practices such as Spraying particles into the skies with planes is not good for humans or nature. It's one more indicator that there is evil going on around us in control. I'm just a guy who loves the study of knowledge about the underpinnings of existence. Why do we do these things, and why don't we change? How do we change the world? Well, it must be done first on a deeper level, from the inside out. First, we change our minds, then we change our actions, and then we can affect others. I would say that philosophy is the most important tool that we have to change ourselves, and the only tool that changes internal conflicts or problems. The study of the nature, causes, or principles of reality, knowledge, or values based on logical reasoning, called philosophia, Latin and Greek. The meanings of words and how the meaning, philosophy, the rational investigation of the truths and principles of being, knowledge, or conduct. A knowledge, a body of knowledge, from Old French. Philosophy or knowledge, philosophie. Directly from Latin, philosophia, and Greek, philosophia. Philo meaning love, or loving, that's philo. And Sophia meaning knowledge or wisdom, or Sophis, wise. To me, that is such an important fundamental part of this whole thing. The ability to philosophize sets the table for making change in the world. But it starts at philosophy. And then from there, it turns into our ideas to actually do things, and then actions in the physical world. So if we want to change anything, first we need to deal with the philosophy. And I feel like that's the biggest missing part in things I watch and hear online. And so that's my contribution that I'm going to try to keep bringing up and pounding in. In modern times, our current philosophy is looked upon as a fringe amusement or a side subject. But in fact, it is the thread that forms the fabric of the reality of daily life. Logical fallacies. The art of debate. Besides the love of wisdom, there are some other extremely important tools for thinking: analyzation and dialectical thinking. Deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning are two important tools that aid in research and learning. And the art of debate is sorely missing in today's public opinion. The mockery of true debate that is displayed in modern politics simply ignores logical fallacies, but instead relies on them as ammunition. I'll be working together with you as we continue to offer opportunities for you and myself to make up our own mind on things and develop our own sense of discernment. True faith, in my opinion, is the willingness to make a mistake and continue to try again. Being good is living in harmony with natural law, not the laws of man, not based on written in text, not because it's old, not because a lot of other people believe it. I'm talking about things that are true just because they're true. As was written in the Declaration of Independence, these truths are self-evident. Quote from Thomas Paine: "Freedom had been hunted round the globe. Reason was considered as rebellion, and the slavery of fear had made men afraid to think. But such is the irresistible nature of truth, that all it asks and all it wants is the liberty of appearing." Part 1. The value of life, or freedom of choice. This section is designed to challenge the listener to fully appreciate the gift of life. The freedom to exist, to move around and see and think and feel, is impossible to quantify because there's nothing of more value other than the gift of life itself that we know of in our experience. Now, some of the reasons life is undervalued have to do with past trauma and violence that have occurred in the history of the human race and continue to persist, such as war. Viktor Frankl, a man who survived the Nazi concentration camps, is quoted, "Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." A very important concept exists between freedom and choice. What freedom is there without choice? To choose your attitude is your last resort, as in Nazi Germany. Viktor Frankl was pushed to the very last thread a man can still survive from, and he understood this better than anyone. Your attitude is your direction or focus. Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, tells the story of Viktor's horrific experience in the hands of the Nazis, losing his entire family, mostly to the gas chambers. This incredible man survived and managed to bring wisdom to the world and gain strength from the experience. He is a shining example of just how valuable one human being can be. Not only did he survive, he used his experience as a tool to help others and to create a better world. Next, I'm going to show you an excerpt from a documentary about the Nuremberg trials. The reason is the World War II atrocities give us a vivid and lasting picture for what evil becomes when manifest in the world in its full, physical, brutal, shocking outcome. What is truly important is to recognize the incredible value of every single soul in every part of life, because it is all part of what you are. We are interconnected with each other. Every other human being on this earth is part of one family of beings. A wise human would not cut off his own finger or toe. To cause harm to other humans is akin to cannibalism. No one should want destruction of their own species. From the book, The End of All Evil. Simple. Truth is always simple. All people recognize truth because all people are intelligent beings. It is the nature of evil to create artificially complex ideas. It does this to hide or obfuscate the freedom it destroys. If you remove the complexities and fears from your life, you will find a plain and beautiful truth. This truth is the nature of your worth. As a human being, you are very special. You are unlike the minerals, the plants, or the animals of the earth. Nothing commands the abilities of intelligence like you. Nothing else has such complete and total ambition to satisfy dreams. Nothing else has the desire or the thirst for knowledge that you possess. You are a human being. I think it's plain to see why I pulled those two statements out of the book. They very much affirm the importance and the value of human life. They emphasize the uniqueness and the special abilities of being human. There's a recognition that there's a force working to hide truth, obfuscate truth, thereby destroying freedom. But you are intelligent. Now, let's take a minute and look at the definition of intelligence. The highest faculty of the mind, the capacity for comprehending general truths, to choose, collect, gather. I pulled this answer someone put on Quora because I liked the look at the etymology and the idea that intelligence could be interpreted to mean read between the lines. And as you can see below, I pulled out of an etymology the root gen. This is important because intelligence is often looked at to mean only smart or only logical, but this word means much more. This word describes the usage of the holistic brain. Using the left brain, that's the intel, if you take the first part of the word, or the straight info, and you commingle it with the right brain, or the gen, the birth, the right brain, which would be the creative, imaginative, intuitive brain function. The I in the middle of the word would be you. It's sort of a magic word. Intel, I, gen. So let's think of intelligence as combining the two polar opposites of our brain and thinking holistically, not just numbers and letters. Please, in these quotes, substitute in your mind man for humans, because this applies to men and women. The value of man. To understand freedom is to understand the value of a person. Everything that evil wants is to disguise and destroy your value. All authority is created by evil men to disguise your worth. To understand your own worth is to understand the nature of liberty. Jeremy Locke, The End of All Evil. Have you ever considered that there is an active force at work in your life trying to disguise your worth? It's certainly not something that would be seen or found if you were not looking for it. What things destroy the value of individual life? In our consciousness, our conscious mind, in our actions, the things we do, what erodes the value of human life? One thing I notice, television shows with lots of death for fun is one example. Dangerous vehicles, foods with toxins that kill hundreds every year. Sugar is a hidden killer that is rarely mentioned anywhere. Look what it does to people and how it fills hospitals with problems and wasted time. These are things that are silently destroying the value of life. When you think of a truly amazing human being, you realize the incredible power of one individual. The reason it's hard to recognize the true value of human being is that we are confused in the modern age about freedom and free will. These are the determining factors for understanding our true value as beings on this planet. World War II and atomic bombs are the type of things that make human life seem worthless and disposable. This is the work of true evil. Value in the modern sense is not the value I'm speaking of, which is why I differentiate here, calling it true value, which includes free will, choice, and freedom. True evil is what destroys free will, choice, and freedom. Not just doing bad stuff or what society deems wrong. That's just following the trend or the fad. What's a modern estimate of the United States of America? How many bombs we drop every day under the current administration? That's your hard-earned money blowing shit up. Twice every TV show. Every 12 minutes, a bomb. Or at least all our money going towards death. The sacrifice ritual performed in ancient times was chopping. How different is that from destruction that comes from dropping 30,000 bombs a year? How's that? And not only the people that are destroyed, but I think about the land, the plants, and the environment as well. It's destruction of life. And destruction of life is wrong. It is impossible to begin to learn that which one thinks one already knows. Epictetus. The human mind and the body are capable of much more than you and I can conceive of. Part 2. Good versus evil. Right and wrong are objective. My personal assertion is that the current dark age of humanity is a crisis of perception. My method is to lead you down a possible logical thought process where one idea builds the foundation for the next, not through trickery or subtle word magic, but through plain language, discovery, new ideas, and perspectives. You choose what to decide. Part of my personal life struggle has been to reclaim my spirituality, my connection to the all. Evil is defined as the fact of suffering, misfortune, or wrongdoing. A morally bad or wrong, causing injury, pain, or harm. A cosmic evil force. The threat of impending violence. It's a pretty simple thing. Evil just means basically causing harm. One differentiation to make though. I would not consider an act of nature, like a volcano or a lion killing a zebra, evil. When I'm using the word, what I mean is from the point of view of the human. We have to look at nature in a different way because its intelligence is very different than ours. Let's give that some thought. What is God? The force of good? Whatever exists is good. Evil exists. Is that good? Good is a human way of describing and understanding the wonderful force all around us that gives opportunity for new life. Yet there is destruction in that process as well. The natural processes of nature do not have that one valuable thing we discussed so much in part 1, the choice. But how about the word God? Does this word mean anything outside of the temples and religious structures? It really does not make sense logically, or in an intuitive sense, that there's no intelligence behind the design of this reality that we're experiencing. It's so multifaceted and dimensional, simple and complex at the same time. The problem, in my experience, is that many folks I speak with have had some major break, losing their religion, or finding the light. And oftentimes, some experience at a young age traumatized their spiritual self. Many choose to ignore the higher or the deeper self, the part that is connected, as pictured in the tree of life motif, to the source, the all, the universe, the cosmos, the great spirit, the divine, the ultimate, or the universal consciousness, the great architect. Many names for the same thing. The fabric of reality is made of something and nothing and everything. What can we call that? Maybe we can agree on the great intelligence. Sometimes using different combination of words We can accomplish understanding through comparison. What is nonsensible to me is to personify this all-encompassing power, as religions try to do, into like a man. What is it? I'm going to try to let someone maybe who can speak a little bit more eloquently on the subject than myself. And I've chosen a man named Alan Watts. Let's see what Alan Watts has to say on this subject.
I tell you, I knew a monk who started out in life as pretty much of an agnostic or an atheist, and then he began to read Henri Bergson, the French philosopher who proclaimed the vital force, the élan vital, and so on. And the more he read into this kind of philosophy, the more he saw that these people were really talking about God. And I've read a great deal of theological reasoning about the existence of God, and they all start out on this line. If you are intelligent and reasonable, you cannot be the product of a mechanical and meaningless universe. Figs do not grow on thistles. Grapes do not grow on thorns. And therefore, you, as an expression of the universe, as an aperture through which the universe is observing itself, cannot be a mere fluke. Because if this world peoples, as a tree brings forth fruit, then the universe itself, the energy which underlies it, what it's all about, the ground of being, as Paul Tillich called it, must be intelligent. Now, when you come...
Alan Watts is an author and a speaker who studied the Eastern religions such as Buddhism. He combines ideas and philosophies from the East with his upbringings in Western Christian beliefs and forms a more complete picture of spirituality that is not tied directly to one system of dogma, but based on the parts that make sense and ring true from each. I picked out 1 Corinthians 13. To me, this piece of wisdom should not be ignored. It is one of the most important pieces of wisdom I've ever come across. And the basic tenet for me is love is patience. Patience is a much better description of what love really is than most things we think of. But let me read the whole passage here, starting with verse 4. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. And the next line actually says, love never ends. Now you can substitute the word love for care, and it basically means the same thing. And notice, patience is the first virtue mentioned in this passage. Patience, kindness, no envy, no self-possessed behavior, which is very similar to saying no solipsism. It goes beyond just an ego-driven action to thinking that you are the center of everything. The idea of honoring others and honoring life, not bragging, because bragging often becomes a way of putting other people's down, which is harmful. Not getting angry without justification or good reason. Not keeping a scorecard of wrongs in order to one up the other. Love rejoices with the truth. That's a joyful thing. And then the last few tenets are especially important. Protects, trusts, hopes, endures. These are some of the more difficult aspects of love or good. To protect life, to endure through difficulties. A right is an action which does not cause harm. Stealing is wrong. Evil is the destruction of what life creates. Lying is a destructive form of stealing truth. Good is always in alignment with truth. So these are seem pretty basic and simple things to say, not taught in school. Imagine if our courtrooms and political spheres were governed by this set of rules, instead of the mumbo-jumbo, confusing mess they call laws. Good and evil should be really simple. The crucial key for understanding our world is to understand the nature of evil. Evil challenges the value of people by denying them the opportunity to make their own choices, by denying them the chance to grow strong in learning and understanding. Evil is something that manifests when beings try to separate from the continuity of life. Stealing opportunity and the ability to grow strong in learning is what has been done to early American slaves, to Jewish people in Germany, like we discussed in World War II. In modern times, in our lives, the robbery is done subtly on all levels of daily life. Debt slavery, dampened creativity because of repetition of false ideals, pictures and stories of lying and deceitful deeds as if they're funny and we should laugh at them. Often people think of Satanism as a cult, which actually only means hidden. Look up the definition of Satanism as described by the founder of this cult. It is the belief that you are God and that you can choose what morality is. Right and wrong are only in your mind, and you can adjust them to fit your whims and desires. That's Anton LaVey's teaching. By default, this ideology of most Americans has become common because most people are just buying what's on TV and movies rather than thinking for themselves. And that what they're buying into is pure Satanism. Let's read right from the website, right here on their facts, fundamental beliefs. Why do Satanists worship the devil? Answer: we don't. Satanists are atheists. We see the universe as being indifferent to us. And so, all morals and values are subjective human constructions. Our position is to be self-centered, with ourselves being the most important person, the God of our subjective universe. So, we are sometimes said to worship ourselves. Our current high priest, Gilmore, calls this the step moving from being an atheist to being an I-theist. Satan, to us, is a symbol of pride, liberty, and individualism, and it serves an external, metaphorical projection of our highest personal potential. We do not believe in Satan as a being or a person. Worship of the self is believing that you are God. Satanism is atheism. As I described earlier, good is essentially being in alignment with nature. In practical terms, that means not harming others. The golden rule: do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Balance and harmony are a natural state, and when there's no stealing or coercion going on, that's what's there. This is evident when you take a walk on the beach or in nature. Everything is perfect just as it should be. The natural environment is self-healing and self-sustaining, just like the workings of our bodies that we discussed in the value section. Even if you drop a bomb and destroy everything, come back in 20 years and life will be there, putting things back together, working towards balance, growing roots and leaves. A quote from Albert Schweitzer: "Man must cease attributing his problems to his environment and learn again to exercise his will, his personal responsibility in the realm of faith and morals." So often in modern news cycles, the fear is instilled in humans that nature's out to get us. The storms, the weather, the impending earthquake. How much of our evil lifestyle is reflected back on us? It makes sense that the world is in peril because we are not proactively working to keep it safe. More bombs and coercion will never result in more peace. I would propose that by becoming deacons of the earth, caretakers of nature, humans will find their place on this planet. When we are concerned as much about the safety and well-being of other humans and other life on this planet, we will finally find some safety ourselves.
What is it that created the illusion that we individuals are so separate from one another? Besides the virtual technological internet connection, modern society is fragmented in ways unknown to the world for most of history. In the United States, family units are often broken with divorce and mental issues, and they're rarely talked about sexual misconduct and physical and mental abuse. The connection to the tribe or local community is lost in many areas, especially high-density neighborhoods and inner cities. We live in our fancy box-shaped houses and zoom around on the slick roads in our shiny rectangle boxes, so we can go to work in cubicles and stare into boxes. Even the shapes of our organization are not the shapes evident in nature. Children are seated in rows rather than circles in school. Punishment begins early with solitary confinement methods. such as detention or getting kicked out of class. Find a square leaf or a box-shaped planet. Where are the rows and columns in nature's wisdom? We are part of a larger living system. A quote from Herman Melville. We cannot live for ourselves alone. Our lives are connected by 1,000 invisible threads, and along these sympathetic fibers, our actions run as causes and return to us as results. How could humans survive without each other? Deepest desire is to have meaning in our lives. And when you consider what that really means, is in some way or another actively working to help other humans. I myself would really struggle to survive without the help of others. Beyond other humans, we are completely dependent on the plants, animals, and minerals of the earth for our survival. Every part of the tapestry of life is interwoven with the rest. Humans are not a solitary species. Part of our joy and well-being depends on our ability to communicate and get along well with other humans. Viktor Frankl said that our deepest desire is to have meaning in our lives. And when you consider what that really means, is in some way or another actively working to help other humans. What if the goal of ending evil in human experience became viral? I talked before about the importance of looking up words and how words are very powerful in the very fabric of the reality. Philosophy is made up of words. So what's interesting is when we start looking at words, there is this sort of secret word magic in it, where words mean things, like spell. Letters are used to spell a word. And in the idea of magic, you would create a spell to enact some change using the physical forces of the universe. Another interesting word, the word itself, word, if you take the S and put it on front of the word, it says sword, which is much like the pen is mightier than the sword. Or, yes, same thing. Another little important thing I took out of the Bible, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. There's a lot of inherent truth meaning in that statement. The word responsibility has two words in it, response and ability. If we do have the ability to respond to a problem, then we have a response ability to do something about it. Now, when you start looking into the mystery schools, esoteric knowledge, which means knowledge held by few, I should say, you find out that the old goofy saying we heard as kids, abracadabra, actually means, or comes from the meaning to mean, what I speak is what I create. So words have power. The world of the unseen creates or sparks the world of the seen and observed. We do this with our spells. We do have this power. Unluckily, this knowledge has been held by a very few amount of people, and most of the masses have been ignorant to this knowledge. This is why it's called occult. Such knowledge has been deliberately hidden in order to create and maintain a power differential between those who hold it and those who are ignorant of it. An important distinction to make. I mentioned that the occult means hidden in part 2, but here's a more complete definition with some etymology. The occult. The word occult is rooted in the Latin adjective occultus, which means hidden from sight, which comes from the Latin verb occultare, to hide or conceal, to keep secret. Both are in turn derived from the Latin noun oculus, eye. So the picture there shows the iceberg, which is a great metaphor for kind of like the hidden picture thing I'd mentioned before. We see the small caps coming out of the water, but the bigger picture is what's below the water. And that's what we are discussing in the End Evil series. Also, as I listen to myself speaking, that the word cult sounds very similar, but has a very different meaning, as it turns out. The two words do not seem to be necessarily related as far as the root or the etymology, according to a site I frequent called etymonline.com, etymonline.com. A cult basically means an extremist, authoritarian-based religious sect. So that's very different from the occult, the occult.
We live in a world of correction, which will continue to correct until there's no defect that needs correction. And this applies to individuals and to nations. We are going to have all kinds of dismal occurrences until we begin to live the principles which we all know to be true. Of the 6 billion people we now have in the world approximately, probably 4 billion of those people are religious. They believe in some kind of a God. They believe in some kind of a golden rule. They believe in some kind of a table of commandments. They all have the same basic concept, and that is refrain from evil, practice the good, and continue to hope for the future. If therefore we all have this in common, why is it not obvious? Why do people in the name of religion murder each other? Yet they have been doing so from the beginning of time, and they have bred nothing but war, disaster, difficulty, and death. Even today, sorrow is being generated all over the world by fanaticism, self-interest, selfishness, and these things. And what are they? They are simply the extreme examples of a system which is wrong from the beginning. This is the final fruit of wrong thinking, wrong living, and wrong believing.
Manly P. Hall points out that it is up to each one of us as individuals to learn to respect the laws of nature in order to bring balance to humanity as a whole. Deep understanding is found in ancient hidden knowledge that we are all connected, and our communal decisions affect the whole of mankind. The way to repair damage in this system is done on an individual level, and then a process of learning and teaching the principles to others that guide our existence.
One great, harmonious, happy unity. Except man will not permit it to do this. He insists on endangering it. He insists on damaging a beautiful necessity in order to achieve some cheap success of his own. So as we're coming time now to the end of this century, the time has come for more or less careful estimation of what's going to happen. That we are not going to be wiped out, but we are going to be forced to reconsider action which is obviously wrong. The more rapidly we accept this and the more quickly we correct our mistakes, the easier these transitions are going to be. We will not have to suffer some horrible disaster if each of us as an individual that really tries to improve the allotment which was given to us in the beginning. Each of us has a certain magnetic keynote, a certain value. And if we live up to that value, we are safe. If we disrupt that value and fall below its level, we are in danger. And in danger we remain until we correct ourselves. Now, you know you're correcting yourself when you begin to feel good about things. When you say to yourself, all these things are working together for good. If you can begin to see the lesson in each problem, and by seeing the lesson dissipate the problem, by watching for opportunities to learn more about the life in which we exist, to gain greater sharing in life, realizing the value of unselfishness as against selfishness, the value of peace as against conflict. All these things we learn. Children can learn them. It is time for education to teach us that the purpose of life is to grow and improve. That the great work of life is not to be measured in a career here, but in an unfoldment of the basic character of the individual.
To live in the world without becoming aware of the meaning of the world is like wandering about in a great library without touching the books. It has always seemed to me that symbolism should be restored to the structure of world education. The young are no longer invited to seek the hidden truths, dynamic and eternal, locked within the shapes and behavior of living beings. To live in the world without becoming aware of the meaning of the world is like wandering around in a great library without touching the books. Just like I was describing before, being in the mall and seeing that weird design and not knowing that there's a hidden picture in it. Because no one told you. The optimist in me hopes that humans can ignite against the tyrannical force of evil, which threatens to take over, like the Borg in Star Trek. We are the Borg. Lower your shields and surrender your ships. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Your culture will adapt to serve us.
resistance is futile. Sci-fi often tells the truth or the future. Check out Animal Farm, 1984, A Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451. Authors like Orwell, Huxley, Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov, just to name a few. This negative imagery represents the true desire of the evil intentions of the Dark Orders to enslave humankind, which is a shadow version of the true unity which already exists in nature. Some terms to research are globalist agenda, New World Order, the people and their associates who repeat that phrase, and their connection to what is called the technocracy. The tentacles of this real plan and conspiracy are right out in the open, but hard to believe, and harder for most to look at with an honest, logical point of view. So let's understand a little more word magic. The etymological root of the word natural. The English word nature is etymologically derived from the ancient Cometian Egyptian word neter, meaning God, symbolized hieroglyphically as a simple stylized flag on a pole, stylized in other cultures as a cleaving axe, which represented a force which was known to exist through its observable effects, like wind, but difficult or impossible to see with the eye. Neter was actually pronounced netcher, extremely close to the English pronunciation of nature, netcher. Observable effects, inherent truths, self-evident truths. Notice the theme and continuity here in these words and understandings. It is not something new that we just made up. This has been existing. This knowledge has been on this planet for a long time. The most important lesson of all hidden esoteric knowledge, and the key to repairing the damage to ourselves and our race, is summed up in the meaning of natural law. It basically is the same as the golden rule in application. Natural law, equality in rights. Now we think of civil rights here in this country and in others as well, as Canada and many other countries use that term. But natural law is a much more complete understanding of the way things are and could be if we were not working against nature. And that would be that everyone has the same exact rights. No one has any more or less rights than anyone else. Since rights are not created by humanity because they exist objectively and inherently in nature, no human being or group of human beings is actually capable of granting rights to anyone else, nor is any human being capable of revoking rights from anyone else. Now, what's difficult to understand about this is that we see so much cases in the world, kind of like the Borg, as I described, where this natural law and equality is being stomped all over, and people are causing coercion and hurting others. And this, to just call an illusion, is frustrating because we see the reality of what happens when the law is broken. We get sickness, a sickness of the mind and a sickness in reality in the world, in the functionings of how we do things.
Part 4, the spell, mind control. There are specific strategies and time-tested science dedicated to both the controlling of the masses and the direct control over a single individual. In this presentation, we will explore methodologies of mind control and what to do about them so that we can see through the illusions and find the truth, or as Max Hendel put it, the light of wisdom. In the last presentation, we discussed the idea that there is hidden knowledge, and because important information has been withheld for so long from the average human, we now have a crisis of perception. We also explored the idea of thinking about all life as an organism or a living thing that already exists as a whole, with natural law binding it together. Man's artificial attempts to recreate a false sense of security and control only leads to harm. As we get deeper into this series now, things are going to get much more difficult. Let's start with Hermetic principles. Now, Hermetic principles were not taught in traditional school, and that's why they're called esoteric or occulted information, only familiar to those who look into the ancient teachings or the mystery schools. Upon careful examination of each principle, it's hard to find an argument that these principles are not in effect. Number one, mentalism, is to say that there is an underlying intelligence in the all, or the great intelligence, as we discussed previously. Correspondence is the idea as above, so below. You see this reflection in all things. Vibration is very much in line with modern science and quantum physics. Everything is vibration. Number four is polarity, just like a magnet has two opposite ends, or the planet. Everything has a polarity. Number five, rhythm, like the waves of the ocean, or our breathing, or the seasons. Everything has its rhythm, up and down. Number six, cause and effect. Every action has a reaction. We can test this with anything. And gender. Everything in nature, there's gender. It exists in all things. This is a foundational concept. Both the Hermetic principles and the idea of natural law are both two bodies of thought and knowledge entirely misunderstood or never even heard of. Once I've had time to mentally digest these concepts, the more time I think about it, the more they resonate. From the moment I looked at this list, I could find no disagreement to the validity of what is being represented. From the book, The End of All Evil, Principles. An example of principle can be found in thermodynamics. A liquid is cooler than a gas. This is a principle. Because this is a principle, it does not restrict us, but enables us. Using this principle, we can condense and expand a substance between gas and liquid to create refrigeration. With this principle, we have more understanding and more power. Principles are truths that create freedom. Conscience. From Latin, con means together, and sciere means to know. Put those together and you get to know together. To know together, or common sense. Knowing is a science involving theories, testing theories, inductive and deductive reasoning, the trivium, discourse. Then, of course, combining all that with intuition and gut feelings. We find truth best working together, with many minds are better than one. And when those minds are in agreement with common principles, where's the enthusiasm to study the truth of things? It is an exciting process, the discovery of reality. Truth is knowable, discoverable, and objective, a great gift of the universe. Hypnosis. There are two main branches of hypnosis, hypnotherapy, and hypnotic suggestion. Hypnosis, also referred to as hypnotherapy or hypnotic suggestion, is a trance-like state in which you have heightened focus and concentration. Hypnosis is usually done with the help of a therapist using verbal repetition and mental images. When you're under hypnosis, you usually feel calm and relaxed and are more open to suggestions. The science of hypnosis involves aiding a person in reaching a heightened state of focus. When one is exceptionally focused on one thing, we can miss a whole world of events. This is how magic works. By keeping your attention focused at what the left hand is doing, while the right hand is doing something tricky. Most people, myself included, want to get home from work so they can check out. Been focusing real hard all day on something that is not necessarily enjoyable or desirable. Consider driving to work and blanking out on the whole trip, or starting to drive to work out of routine when meaning to head somewhere else. Trance-like state, anyone? How about the state of mind we're in when we're watching TV or movie? Open to suggestions? There's a good reason companies spend so much money on advertising. It's a focused attention, a heightened focus, achieved through verbal repetition and mental images. How often do we spend our lives in some trance or another? Are we not susceptible to hypnosis in our daily lives? In the everyday trance of a daydream or movie, an imaginary world seems somewhat real to you in the sense that it fully engages your emotions. Imaginary events can cause real fear, sadness, or happiness, and you may even jolt in your seat if you're surprised by something, a monster leaping from the shadows, for example. Some researchers categorize all such trances as forms of self-hypnosis.
The body and the mind both have a default program to find safety and comfort, it seems. In stressful times, people wish for things to be normal again. I began to notice in my thought process times where my feelings would blur with something I had seen the night before on a violent TV show. That made me want to stop watching television the more I became aware of the phenomenon. I wonder if the subconscious mind can differentiate from TV reality and real life. Perhaps our subconscious mind lives out trauma from television, which actually affects our emotions and dealings with other humans, our friends, and family. People are more and more hypnotized, focused states that are self-imposed, almost as if we're all floating around in our own little dark cities. Being in this programmable state, we become vulnerable to mind control methodologies. Mind control, though it sounds nefarious, is actually a good thing if it's practiced responsibly. To control one's own mind is the most responsible and admirable thing a person can do, as long as it's done for improvement rather than dampening of life's natural desire to grow. There's simply no polite way to tell people they've dedicated their lives to an illusion. Daniel Dennett. It's extremely humiliating to realize that you've been tricked. In many cases, folks are so invested in their career or life's work that they lose the ability to see truth from a truly objective point of view. Life will offer daily opportunities, even for the wisest and smartest of us, to realize that we are wrong. Mistakes are part of the process. As we grow wiser, we become more aware that there is just so much in this existence that we will never know it all, and there are too many doors of knowledge to open them all. Why are most people so unconscious that they continue to refuse to live in harmony with natural law, fail to recognize the rampant presence of evil in their midst, willfully participate in such evil, either directly or indirectly? And the picture there shows what looks like people might as well be waiting at the DMV, just waiting to do what they're told, not really taking their own action, willful decisions. On the right, you see the tree of life, and all the things that cut up the tree of life, that sever the roots and cut off the branches and the leaves. Willful ignorance, fear of owning personal responsibility, self-loathing due to lack of self-respect. The sad truth is that too many of us are spending too much of our time in the realm of evil thoughts and deeds. The results are plainly evident. Humans are facing every kind of imaginable horror on this planet, from war to starvation to mental illness. We accept this condition because we are unaware that all of our actions and deeds are creating the reality in which all humans are experiencing. It's like a family that lives in a messy house, and they all expect someone else to clean up the mess. They go on living like this until one of the people dies of sickness related to the unsanitary conditions. Whose fault was it for the death? The person should have left the messy house, right? The trouble is, in this analogy, the house is our planet, and the family is the human race. And although our imagination would love to leave the dirty planet, like in the movie WALL-E, we're stuck here in our own mess. But if we make a strong effort, each of us, to improve and understand the real situation here, it can be changed. We must become conscious of ourselves and our communities. This will take initiative, hard work, and effort on a few people at first to motivate the others. In part 3, we discussed the interconnectedness of all life on this planet. What has been occurring in recent years is a ramping up of the fragmentation process. The more humans are focused on mundane tasks, the less they are noticing the inner workings of those who seek control. Power itself needs fragmentation in order to gain more power. Hierarchies consist of each layer below being broken down into smaller parts that can be managed. It's really difficult to think big and see all life as a system if you have always been looking at it from the point of view of one puzzle piece, as in the slide. It's broken from the whole. Another example of this concept we can use is I made my own list of methods of manipulation. These are things I think are used in war, in terms of strategies, and things I think are thought up behind the scenes in modern days. Play on people's fears, poison the food supply, poison the water supply, divide and conquer, indoctrination from an early age, storytelling, capture the imagination, subversive symbolism, poisonous medicine, Hegelian dialectic, tar baby tactic, encirclement, emotional traumatic experiences. In all the history of humankind, all methods of coercion have been experimented with. The authorities and controlling forces of the world have achieved a long list of methods to control populations. To keep people in a state of fear and scarcity, a ruler warns constantly of an impending doom or a force which threatens us all, thereby requiring the raising of an army and, of course, more taxes. The food and water supply would have historically been an important part of any battle or war between peoples. In modern times, it does not take much research to find examples of the food and water being altered or poisoned or neglected in some way to be harmful to humans. Divide and conquer is a method of keeping people distanced and fearful of each other. Flags, borders, and military salutes are great propagating the idea that there's lots of other groups to fear, so we must ourselves be totally brutal and deadly force, still knowing that wouldn't that be the credo of the other army? Certain religions, historically, were much more forceful with their views. People were killed for heresy, or worse, tortured. In modern times, there's still much pressure to fit in and be like the others. This occurs in churches, schools, and jobs. There is an expectation of conformity. In NLP, the practitioner learns to tell a story to get the subject in an imaginative state, so that the practitioner can drop little hints and repeat key words meant to instruct the tranced listener to follow specific embedded messages. Symbolism could be a whole series by itself. What is important to realize is that symbolism is a language of the universe. Certain archetypes exist that are understood on a subconscious level, even if they are not comprehended in logical thought on the surface. Though we certainly have learned a lot about medicine in the modern age, there's much harm being done. Over 300,000 deaths a year due to pharmaceuticals. Hegelian dialectic will be discussed in an upcoming slide. The tar baby idea is using a decoy to flush out all the resistance so they can be nullified. Encirclement is the ancient strategy of just completely surrounding the enemy in every way. Emotional traumatic experiences tend to fragment the mind, forcing people into one part of the mind that feels comfortable, effectively blocking the ability to be a free thinker and use the whole brain as a unit. We're all affected by this tactic in many ways, but I would like to mention here the unnoticed effect of killing humans on television and movies. How many people have you witnessed being murdered or killed in a given week? Just because it's on the screen does not mean that it does not affect your mind and anatomy in a traumatic way. A quote being quoted to David Rockefeller: "If the Council on Foreign Relations raises the hackles of the conspiracy theorists, the Bilderberg meetings must induce apocalyptic visions of omnipotent international bankers plotting with unscrupulous government officials to impose cunning schemes on an ignorant and unsuspecting world." David Rockefeller. Are there organizations in the world whose main goal is to subvert your attention and direct your mind to think a certain way? Is there a massive amount of time and energy being spent constantly on how to control the minds of the masses? Of course, that is for your safety, don't worry. If you haven't ever thought about systems dedicating to controlling your mind, consider looking into the Tavistock Institute, the Club of Rome, the Bilderberg Group, or the Council on Foreign Relations, just to name a few. There are numerous clubs and groups who all have the same goal: control the minds of the people. If they were having no success, these groups would cease to exist for lack of funding. Yet some have been around for a long time and seem to be growing in strength. It's really nothing new for people to try and take over as much of the world as possible. The past attempts usually used brutality and violence, which ultimately failed in each case. The modern tactic is a silent war, using information, toxins and poisons, and various mind control methodologies. Edward Bernays was known as the master of propaganda. He was known to say, "Propaganda is the executive arm of the invisible government." Edward Bernays brought cigarettes to America, convinced the world that smoking cigarettes was a great thing to do. He was also quoted as saying,
In almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind. The massive amount of time, money, and energy spent by companies, think tanks, governments, and political groups is a tribute to the effectiveness of advertising and propaganda. There's a plaque above the lockers in my daughter's high school that says, "If you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything." The fact that you're watching this series and have made it this far shows that you are a human who is actively searching for truth and curious if you can make the world a better place. Remember how we discussed hypnotism really being a type of attentive focus? If our focus is not solely on good or life-giving activities, we tend to be victims of other more focused and attentive agendas designed to prey on our emotions in order to affect our actions. If we are not very aware, we can all become trapped in evil plots unknowingly because of our ignorance. I know this, unluckily, from my own experience. The 3 monkeys represent emotional mind control. When we're in a state of anger, sadness, frustration, because a conversation becomes uncomfortable, the tendency is to close our ears, or our mind, or our mouth. George Hegel was known to say, "We learn from history that we do not learn from history." The word dialectic means the art or practice of arriving at the truth by the exchange of logical arguments. Definition number 2. The process especially associated with Hegel of arriving at the truth by stating a thesis, developing a contradictory antithesis, and combining and resolving them into a coherent synthesis. The Marxian process of change through the conflict of opposing forces, whereby a given contradiction is characterized by a primary and a secondary aspect. The secondary succumbing to the primary, which is then transformed into an aspect of a new contradiction. A prominent philosopher named George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel has been seen in the 20th century as the originator of the thesis, antithesis, synthesis triad, or the Hegelian dialectic. The Hegelian dialectic is where the ruling elite create a problem, anticipating in advance the reaction of the population to the crisis, and thus conditioning the people to call for a change. When the population is properly conditioned, the desired agenda of the ruling elite is presented as the solution. The solution they present is not intended to solve the problem, but to serve as a basis for a new problem, or exacerbate the existing one. When the newly created problem reaches a boiling point, it becomes the foundation for the people to clamor for the change again. This process is repeated over and over, all the time moving society towards whatever endpoint they have in mind. Remember when we discussed the word dialectic, the art or practice arriving at the truth by the exchange of logical arguments? Here's an example of the Hegelian dialectic at play in the real world. I chose September 11th, building explosions, and demolition events. The problem: America is defenseless against these cave dwellers. Over 3,000 innocent Americans die because of terrorists, so-called terrorists. The reaction: Americans put flag stickers on their cars, and they fear people from the Middle East. Patriotism soars, and many Americans want revenge. The solution: the government expands mass surveillance to its own citizens openly and nullifies the Constitution with the Patriot Act. They begin a war if the invasion of Iraq ensues. The shock and awe program keeps the people mesmerized and satiated, and the president's ratings went way up during that period of time. Most things in the network news cycle are some sort of Hegelian dialectic being played out. News is not actually an honest effort to keep you informed about things that are really going on, especially in your area. News is designed to make money by preying on your emotions and insecurities. News has no conscience, no heart, and no empathy. The aim of End Evil is not to focus in on the most evil aspects of existence, but to understand the workings of evil and recognize evil for what it truly is. This is necessary because evil is tricky. Like the wolf in sheep's clothing, the trickster will always try to fool you. Becoming aware of trickery, in the language of trickery, in the science of mind control, will help us all to heal ourselves inwardly and separate from the cycle of emotional reaction and ignorance. We could grow accustomed to studying problems, working together to discuss opposing viewpoints, and discovering the common sense or conscience by mutual agreement and working hard on localized, creative solutions to problems as they begin to arise.
The buckled column caused additional collapsed floors and falling debris that removed support from adjacent interior columns. A chain reaction then caused other interior columns to fail in quick succession. The outside shell of the building fell. The NIST team found no evidence that explosives were involved in the collapse.
And our analysis showed that even the smallest explosive charge that was capable of bringing down the critical column in the building, had it occurred, we would have seen sound levels of 120 to 130 decibels about a half a mile away. That would have been an incredibly loud sound, and that sound was not picked up by any of the videos or witnesses that we have talked to.
The team found that World Trade Center 7's design was generally consistent with the relevant building codes when it was built.
Our high-rise buildings in this country are very, very safe. Having a collapse of this nature is a very rare event.
Nevertheless, to ensure that buildings do not collapse in fires, even when sprinklers fail or are not present, the NIST team urges reevaluation of the fire performance of structures with long-span floors and other design elements similar to WTC-7. The team's report also calls for stronger codes, standards, and practices so that other buildings don't suffer the same fate.
Tall building had ever collapsed primarily due to fire. But that's exactly what investigators believe happened to the 47-story World Trade Center Building 7 on September 11th.
Because everybody, once you have seen Building 7, there is no way back. You can cheat on yourself and you can try to suppress it, but you cannot. You have seen it and then there is no way back. It's not very healthy, to lie to yourself and say, no, I didn't see that. But many people do because it's simply too painful.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago, I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. It seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline, a symbol of the financial prosperity of this city, but completely disappeared now, and New York is still unable to take on board what has happened to them today.
Presumably there were very few people in the Salomon building when it collapsed. I mean, there were, I suppose, fears of possible further collapses around the area.
That's what you would hope, because they don't really know where to turn. And that's the very sad thing. I think there's going to be a lot of very, very traumatized people that has hit them very, very hard.
Jane, I think many of us, when we heard the news, perhaps on the radio earlier today, were completely flabbergasted by it and just couldn't comprehend it. I mean, it almost sounded too far-fetched. I was wondering what it's felt like for you being in Manhattan. Well, unfortunately, I think we've lost the line with Jane Stanley in Manhattan.
Now, here we're going to show you a videotape of the collapse itself. Describe that. Now we go to videotape, the collapse of this building. Amazing, incredible picture word.
Too far-fetched.
For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
see what you see and not what you're supposed to see.